everybody. Welcome back to the Mindful of You podcast. This is episode 75, Cognitive Distortions, Part 3. We are coming up on the end of our cognitive distortion series. I just want you guys to know there's more. Like, it depends on the website, the book, the article you're looking at. There's a lot. So this is a major thing they look at in cognitive behavioral therapy, is these distortions, and they'll look at these as a means to making you better. So according to some people, understanding these can be very, very helpful and help you feel better right away. So I think I have 6 today. So let's just jump in. So I've got 5 and then I've got my own bonus one. So this one says, always being right. This desire turns into a cognitive distortion when it trumps everything else, including evidence and other people's feelings. In this cognitive distortion, you see your own opinions as facts of life. This is why you will go to great lengths to prove you're right. Okay, this makes me think of Modern Family, Claire Dunphy, when Phil blames her for something that happened at the store. She said she tripped, or he said she tripped or something like that. And she literally goes to the store, drives to the store and gets like a videotape to prove that she wasn't wrong. And she had to go through so much work to prove she was right when this did not matter at all. That was one of the episodes where I got off the Claire Dunphy train. I was like, this lady is crazy. And so it was so important to her to prove she was right that she went to such great lengths to do it. There might be situations where you feel really passionate about something important, where you want to show why you believe the thing that you do, but oftentimes these things do not matter. I don't know if you guys have ever been in a conversation with like a couple where one of them is like trying to tell a story and the other one's like, oh, you said that happened on Tuesday. It was Monday. And it's like, that does not matter. It does not care. And then it gets even worse if one of them bites back and is like, no, it was Tuesday. It's like, okay, it does not matter. So if it doesn't matter, try and let go of being right. I do it. I definitely have had times where I get hung up on little details that do not matter. So if you catch yourself doing that, just try and take a deep breath and be like, doesn't matter. I don't need to prove I'm right. And maybe I'm not right. And yeah. So there are examples. You quarrel with your sibling about how your parents haven't supported you enough. You're convinced this was the case all the time, while your sibling believes it varied according to the situation. Since your sibling doesn't feel the same way, you become angry and say things that rub your sibling the wrong way. You know they're getting upset, but you continue the argument to prove your point. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely not a need to... like, people can experience things in a different way. And I think that's why there's a problem with always being right too, is it's like that might have been your experience, but if that wasn't their experience, then it might be true for you and not true for them. So the next one is global labeling. Labeling or mislabeling refers to taking a single attribute and turning it into an absolute. This happens when you judge and then define yourself or others based on an isolated event. The labels assigned are usually negative and extreme. Example: you see your new teammate applying makeup before a meeting and you call them shallow, or they don't submit a report on time and you label them useless. This is an extreme form of overgeneralization that leads you to judge an action without taking the context into account. This in turn leads you to see yourself and others in ways that may not be accurate. Assigning labels to others can impact how you interact with them. This, in turn, could add friction to your relationships. When you assign those labels to yourself, it can hurt your self-esteem and confidence, leading you to feel insecure and anxious. So something I learned about in my class was the importance of like human connection and social interest. So basically being connected to a community, being connected to people, and how beneficial that can be for all of our mental health and for all of our well-being. We've got families, but we used to have like full tribes. There's still some cultures out there that live in more of a tribe format. A baby is everybody's baby, and like they all work together in the community. It's really strong. There are animal species that live this way as well. So as a result of learning about this, I decided I wanted to be more intentional about making connections with other humans. a barrier that stops me from this sometimes is I'm a little bit judgmental. I tend to like see people and make a judgment about them. And it just doesn't always stick in my mind for very long. But I think that initial, gut reaction, first impression sometimes determines whether I, approach that person or, try to be friendly with them or become their friend. And so I've decided I'm going to work really hard to, one, if I make a judgment, whatever, sometimes you can't control it. It just, comes to your mind. But putting that aside and trying to, be friends or be friendly with these people anyway, because I've learned how important community is. I believe that's true for other people. So why would I not try and make it be true for me? And so I go to the aerial gym, and there's a girl who has come to my classes before that has done things that I have labeled as weird or off-putting that other people might agree with. But that doesn't really matter in this case because we're not trying to be right. I tried my first pole class yesterday. So I've always only done aerial silks, occasionally hammock. But yesterday I tried a pole class for the first time, and this girl happened to be in that class. I was out of my element because I've never done pole before. And so I walked straight up to her because I was like, familiar face. And I was like, hey, remind me your name. I'm Mallory. And she reminded me her name. And she was so nice and so friendly and so helpful the whole class. And I was like, shame on me for having judged this woman before. Yeah, she's a little different than I am. Like, we're not the same, but that's fine. And that doesn't mean we can't find community with them. But if I had stuck with this label, because I was committing this cognitive distortion, if I had stuck with this label I'd given her of being off-putting, strange, or whatever it was, I wouldn't have approached her. I would have, gone to the other corner, stuck to myself, and I would have been fine, right? But instead, I got to experience a level of connection. And so I think that this particular distortion can prevent us from becoming close with other people. At least I've noticed that with myself. So try and catch yourself when you're labeling or when you're making an assumption about somebody based off of a first impression, and maybe try again. And yeah, maybe you end up not really liking that person, not really liking talking to them very much. But that doesn't mean you can't be civil, can't be kind, understand why they are the way they are, and eventually you may become closer than you thought you would be. Fallacy of change. The fallacy of change has you expecting other people will change their ways to suit your expectations or needs, particularly when you pressure them enough. Ooh, that's manipulative. Example, you want your partner to focus only on you, despite knowing that they've always been very social and value time with friends. Big yikes. So every time they go out, you let them know it's not okay with you. Eventually, they will change their ways and want to stay home all the time. Oh my gosh, that's so sad. Yeah, don't do that. If you find, I'm reacting like this because I've seen some of these traits in myself and recognize that they are very toxic. So, you got to let people be themselves. You cannot control them. You can control you. If there's a behavior you're not okay with, and it affects you directly, that's hard because it could be argued that his behavior of going out with friends affects this person directly. But just know that you can only control yourself, and attempts to control other people are manipulation. Now, some people don't view it that way because it's like, well, what if their behavior is negative? So, change this to, partner is going out and drinking every night, not coming back till 2 or 3 a.m. You might have more sympathy for this person, right? But they still can't change them. You can change yourself. You can do your best to let them know your desires, your needs, your wants. But ultimately, you can't, lock them in a room and say, don't go out and drink. And so knowing that, you have to know the best ways to take care of yourself. And if that's not being with a person who continues to do that, then that's fair. You don't use that as a threat and say, I'm going to leave you unless you fix this, but you've got to recognize when enough is enough. But this situation, that's not that. That's scary because you shouldn't be isolating people from their support systems. But I found this with myself before, where it's like, I just want to hang out with my husband. Why does he want to go do this and this and this? But this is helping remind me, like, this is why, because it's really manipulative and not great to, not allow your partner or your spouse to go socialize. You may have days or times where you request and say, you know what, I'd really rather you stay home, but I understand if you want to go out. And they might choose to stay home. They might not. So you're welcome to make your wishes known, but you can't force people to change. Okay. Emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning leads you to believe that the way you feel is a reflection of reality. I feel this way about the situation, hence it must be a fact, defines this cognitive distortion. Feeling inadequate in a situation turns into I don't belong anywhere. This cognitive distortion might also lead you to believe future events depend on how you feel. You may firmly believe something bad will happen today because you woke up feeling anxious. Interesting. You might also assess a random situation based on your emotional reaction. If someone says something that makes you angry, you immediately conclude that person is treating you poorly. This was huge for me with OCD, like fixing this. Because OCD is all about intrusive thoughts, and they don't use the term intrusive feelings, but if we're to believe that our feelings come from our thoughts, then it would make sense that feelings could be intrusive too. But it's all about doing what your higher self, my treatment was all about doing what your higher self thinks makes sense or wants to do, not what the feeling or the thought is telling you have to do. And so I learned to recognize that, like, my emotions were not always right. Most of the time we're wrong. So if I woke up feeling anxious, to go on like it was a normal day. And eventually the feelings of anxiety would subside without me doing all of my compulsions and rituals. And so it's uncomfortable to start doing that. But yeah, with this particular cognitive distortion, I see a lot of OCD in this. Because we're basically giving these intrusive thoughts and feelings the power to control the rest of our day or to control our life. And it's so weird because, like, you have to kind of differentiate, like, what's you and what's the OCD without being too intense about it. But yeah, you have to decide, what do I value? What do I think makes sense? And not let your emotions deter you from pursuing those things, even if they don't quite match. And I think that's different from, religious prompting and things like that. It's a different feeling. So you just have to learn to discern that. Okay. Second to last one, because I have a bonus one. Shoulds. As cognitive distortions, should statements are subjective, ironclad rules you set for yourself and others without considering the specifics of a circumstance. You tell yourself that things should be a certain way with no exceptions. You think people should always be on time, or that someone who is independent should also be self-sufficient and never ask for help. When it comes to yourself, you might believe you should always make your bed, or you should always make people laugh. You should be better, you constantly tell yourself. When these things don't happen, they really depend on many factors. You feel guilty, disappointed, let down, or frustrated. You may believe you're trying to motivate yourself with these statements, such as, I should go to the gym every day. However, when circumstances change and you can't do what you should, you become angry and upset. You got out of work late and couldn't get to the gym, for example. Yeah. Shoulds are not great. We've talked about this on the podcast before, just because they're not super motivating. It's like, how we hate, like, when people tell us what to do, like, you should unload the dishwasher, or like, you should take the dog for a walk. You should do this. You should do this. It's like, okay, now I don't want to. Same thing happens when we tell ourselves that. So if we tell ourselves, you should be going to the gym every day, it's like, yeah, I know I should, I just don't want to, And so should's just not the right word. I think if you relanguage it and tell yourself, what you want, then that kind of takes the shame away too, and kind of makes you more likely to do it. Like if you were to change that to, I want to go to the gym every day, and take the shame out of it, the should part, then you will, get to the gym as much as you can. And then if you can't go, it's not all of a sudden like bad because it's like, well, I wanted to, I just couldn't make it because I got out of work late. And then there's not as much heaviness with it. It's not that simple, but it also is that simple. But yeah, as we practice kind of shifting our language around these things, hopefully we can also shift our perspective and see that not everything has to be so like heavy. Okay, last one. No hay salida. This was in my Spanish psychology class. So the cognitive distortion is no hay salida, or there is no exit. This cognitive distortion is really serious. And the way my professor explained it is that it's when people have decided that there is no way out of the situation that they're in. The bills have piled up too much. The debt is too high. I've done too much wrong. There's no way out of this. And so a lot of times this causes them to attempt suicide or to start considering suicide because they think that there is no other exit from their life or from their problems. It's not that hard to get to this point because life is really hard. There's a lot of challenges. Life is expensive. Money is intimidating. Life is hard and full of grief. So it's easy to get addicted to things that help us cope with the hardness of life. Life just isn't easy. And that doesn't mean we dwell on that. We don't feel joy. I'm joyful most of the time, despite the fact that life isn't easy. And I also have an extremely privileged and blessed life, and I'm going to acknowledge that does help. But there's always an exit that is not suicide. And I think that there have been times in my life where I have, thought I'm never going to get better. I'm stressing people out. I'm a burden. I'm whatever it may be. And it seems like that's the only exit. But it's just not. And I think, the only way that I found to overcome this fallacy was seeking mental help and having a support system. So a safety plan in place, people who could tell me, that they loved me and kind of be that positive voice in my brain when I didn't have one. And also to just keep moving forward, like to just press on and do my best to see the little things that were going my way or were going a positive way. It's life is difficult, but there's always light eventually. And it might take a long time for that light to come. When it comes, it feels really good. Like I remember I was around 19, 20 when I was feeling this way, and I feel like, my gosh, my life is so good now. Like, thank goodness. And some people just might feel like that relief isn't coming for them. But I believe it does eventually. But I know that like thinking in this way or thinking that there is no exit isn't going to help you find the light any sooner. And so try and believe that there is, that there are solutions, that there are ways to get better, and seek the help that's available to you. So thank you guys for taking part in this series. It was really enjoyable for me. It helped me a lot as well. Especially the one today about emotional reasoning was a good reminder. So just keep moving forward. If you like this podcast, make sure to follow it or subscribe to my YouTube channel. I love making these every week. And last thing, I ended up accepting a spot in a Master's of Social Work program. So I'll be starting that this fall. I'm so excited. It's kind of the next step in being able to do therapy. It's going to be a lot of work, but I'm really excited. So thank you guys for supporting me, and have an amazing week. Bye-bye.